This morning you bought something, maybe coffee, maybe groceries, maybe something online. You didn't think twice about it. But there was a moment in human history when nobody had ever bought anything, when nobody had ever sold anything, when the entire concept of a business didn't exist. And then one person changed that, forever. Let's start with what a business actually is, because the answer is simpler than you think. A business is simply someone who has something others need and figured out how to provide it consistently in exchange for something valuable. That's it. That's the whole thing. By that definition, the first business in human history almost certainly involved a skill that was rare and valuable in the group. And the most valuable skill in the prehistoric world, the one that determined whether your group lived or died, was making sharp stone tools. Making a truly good stone tool, an obsidian blade sharp enough to cut through bone, required years of practice and a specific type of knowledge that not everyone had. And here is where the first business was born, when one person realized their skill was worth more than just helping their own family. Archaeologists have found sites where one person was clearly making far more tools than their group could ever use. They weren't making tools for themselves, they were making tools for trade. This is the oldest business model in human history. Make something better than anyone else can, and trade the surplus. And it's still the foundation of every successful business today. But toolmaking wasn't the only early business, and probably wasn't even the first. There's a strong argument that the very first business in human history was healing. In every prehistoric group, someone knew which plants healed wounds, which reduced fever, which stopped infection. That knowledge was accumulated over generations, passed down carefully, and represented an enormous competitive advantage for the person who held it. When someone in the group was injured or sick, they came to this person. And in exchange, the healer received food, protection, and status within the group. This is a business, a service business. Running without money, without contracts, without any of the things we associate with business today. And here's the thing about that ancient healer that most people never think about. They were running a business with a recurring customer base, because people keep getting sick. Now, let's talk about the third early business, and this one is going to surprise you. Storytelling. In prehistoric groups, the person who could hold the group's attention around the fire at night was providing an extremely valuable service. They transmitted survival knowledge, cultural memory, and social cohesion, all wrapped in an entertaining package. And in return, they received the same as the healer: food, protection, and elevated status. The storyteller is the world's first content creator, and they were getting paid for it before written language existed. Now, here's something that will genuinely change how you think about business. Every single one of those early businesses, toolmaking, healing, storytelling, was solving a problem the group had. Not making money, not building a brand, not disrupting an industry, just solving a real problem that real people had. That's it. That's the whole secret. That's what every successful business in human history has been doing since the very beginning. Now, let's talk about how these early businesses grew, because this is where it gets really interesting. The first limitation of every early business was the same: one person can only do so much. So the first business owners did something that every business owner still does today: they taught someone else. The apprenticeship model, one master teaching one student, is the oldest business structure in human history, and it created the first business problem competition. When your apprentice becomes good enough to serve customers on their own, they might just become your competitor. This problem is still unsolved today. Ask any business owner who has trained someone who then left to start their own company. Now let's talk about something that changed business forever: specialization. In the earliest human groups, everyone did everything. Everyone hunted, everyone gathered plants, everyone made their own tools. Everyone was mediocre at everything. Then groups discovered that if one person focused entirely on making tools, they got dramatically better at it. And the group that had a dedicated toolmaker outcompeted groups that didn't. Specialization is the engine that drives all economic growth, and it started with prehistoric humans figuring out that one person doing one thing really well beats everyone doing everything adequately. Now here's where the story of the first business gets genuinely fascinating. Because once you have specialists, you need a way for them to exchange what they make. And this is where barter was born, the direct exchange of one thing for another. Barter sounds simple, but it had one enormous problem that made it incredibly frustrating to use. You need to find someone who has what you want and wants what you have at the same time. What if you need meat today, but the hunter doesn't need a tool until next month? So, early businesses developed something brilliant to solve this problem: reputation-based credit. If you had a good reputation, people would give you things today based on the trust that you would return equivalent value later. Your reputation was your credit score, and it worked exactly the same way. Now, let's talk about the moment that changed everything for early business: the invention of a medium of exchange. Early humans figured out that certain objects worked better than others as a medium for exchange. The best exchange objects were portable, durable, divisible, and scarce enough to hold value. Shell beads became one of the first widely used exchange objects found across archaeological sites, thousands of miles apart. This is proto-money, not quite money yet, but performing the same function. And with proto-money, early businesses could suddenly scale beyond what direct barter allowed. Now, here's the part of this story that should make every modern entrepreneur think differently. Every problem that modern businesses face was already faced and solved by prehistoric businesses. How do you stand out from competitors? The ancient toolmaker's answer: make something better than everyone else. How do you build customer loyalty? The ancient healer's answer: be the person people trust with their most important problems. How do you scale when you can only do so much yourself? The ancient answer: teach someone and build a team. How do you get customers to pay before you deliver? The ancient answer: build a reputation so strong that people trust you in advance. The problems haven't changed, only the tools have. Now, let's talk about what the first businesses tell us about human nature itself. The fact that humans started businesses before they had language, money, or writing tells us something profound. The drive to create value, exchange it, and build something that outlasts the moment is not a modern invention. It's hardwired. It's as old as our species, and it shows up in every human culture ever documented. Which means if you have ever wanted to build something, start something, create something that provides value to other people, you are not following a modern trend. You are following the oldest human instinct there is. Now, here is what I find most remarkable about the entire story of the first business. The first businesses weren't started by people trying to get rich. They were started by people who were genuinely good at something and discovered that being good at it was valuable to other people. The toolmaker loved making tools. The healer cared about healing people. The storyteller was genuinely captivated by stories. The business came second as a natural consequence of being excellent at something people needed. And that sequence: get genuinely good at something that genuinely helps people and let the business follow, is still the most reliable path to building something that lasts. This morning, you bought something without thinking twice. But that transaction, that ordinary moment, is the direct descendant of the first time one human looked at another and said, "I have something you need." Every business that has ever existed, from the prehistoric toolmaker to the most valuable company in the world today, started with that same sentence: "I have something you need." That's where it started. That's where it always starts. And if you've ever thought about starting something, that's the only place you need to begin.